right, we are live. This is the first, um, the first live stream for this channel. This is fairly new for me because I'm used to streaming on Facebook with a lot of people that I already know. But let's get into it. First of all, if you're new to the channel, which pretty much all of you must be, my name is. We're gonna go by Mayo. My name is Mayo, and we on this channel we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff. We're gonna talk about faith. We may potentially get into sports at some point. Self help, um, just meditations and thoughts about life in the world. Um, but like the title of this thing says, you should be paying attention to this. I probably should have put in parentheses some type of like political thing. But you should be paying attention to the world that you live in. I live in a city that's going through urban renewal, right? I'll just leave it at that. And what's interesting is from time to time, with that, there's like a lot of older houses, especially in the historical area, and there's like houses that get torn down. There's dilapidated houses, houses that are being reconstructed, but on occasionally on different blocks, you'll see like one house standing amongst a bunch of stuff. Specifically, like one house standing in between two houses. It might be an abandoned house. It might be a rebuilt house. It might be two abandoned houses, right? But it's that one house that seems to be in the midst of disorder. You know what I mean? And that you could tell at a point in time that this was probably a thriving neighborhood. It was. I can say that for sure because I used to live here as a child. It was a thriving neighborhood. It was good. Things were together. It was businesses. It was restaurants. It was things of that nature. I'm going somewhere with this. Just give me a second. And what's happened is, well, primarily with us, it's like these drugs kind of swooped in the 80s and 90s, and then there was this like gradual decline of the area, and most of the families with dough, even my family when I was younger, moved out. We still own the house, so I don't know, moving back in. Slash, like, I didn't want us to sell it, so I wanted to own it, and that was the whole thing. But observing these houses once again, I feel like that's us as people of faith, right? Is that we're in a position where we're surrounded by a bunch of destructive things, right? Trying to survive and function just like that house. But what happens with houses like that? You could have stuff you have to fix on one side. You could have, pest or something that you got to defend because the other house is abandoned on the other side. You may have distractions that come in front of you because of different issues there too, right? So you have to defend consistently what's around you. Am I just talking about houses? Absolutely not. What I'm talking about right now is us as believers in this country in this time. We have been placed in a position where none of this makes sense. We have a president, if we're completely honest, right? This man, if he's not senile, he's on his way. And I'm pretty sure he's senile at this point. And once again, if he's not, he's on his neck. But either way, he's not really fit for the office that he's in. He does have a history of a measure of racism. Looking back at that crime bill in the 90s that nobody seems to want to talk about for whatever reason. And then we have another guy who is completely inexperienced as a politician. The world has done a very effective job to make him seem like the biggest villain in all of this, even though a bunch of crazy stuff came out over the last like 10 years, including like Epstein Island, which, I mean, he was on that. And even like the weird stuff with Hillary's emails and Moloch and all that stuff, right? But we're watching, and we have been watching for like the last 40 to 50 years, like the gradual spiritual decay of our country. And there's different points of like renewal and uptick, and people feel better, but we're in this gradual decline where more and more things that were abnormal in the time of like my grandparents and even my parents coming up, like unthinkable things are commonplace. Are commonplace, and they're not new. It's just that the voices that have been able to promote these things have gotten older and they become common. And we're seeing now a bunch of spiritual consequences play out in front of us that we don't want to deal with. Um, and my concern, right, especially through reading a book, Jeremiah in the Bible. I don't know how many of y'all read the Bible, but and it's a very long book. But it's a very chilling chapter and verse in there, where he at the end of it is Jeremiah 5, where he says, "Your priests rule by their own power. Your prophets prophesy falsely, and your people and our people um, love to have it so. But what will you do in the end?" And I believe that that is the state of the hearts of the people in this country now. Is that we don't want to endure hearing a word of correction, of warning, of things like that. You know, you saw it even on a secular level. You know, just sidestepping anything scriptural, spiritual. Like, you know, somebody like Kevin Samuels, I get that he was harsh with his delivery, but what he said applied to a lot of people. And instead of hearing it and processing it, they got defensive. And this is secular wisdom. How much more for godly wisdom? People don't want to get preached to these days. A lot of people don't. But it's strange because the same people want God really bad. So much so that they like go out and they'll play with crystals and they'll um, do like this pseudo faith thing, right? Where like it's like I want to do it but my way. And what was interesting also was that like you'll talk to them at times and they desire hope and things like that from you. Um, and some people have even come to me at times. And usually I'm thankful to the Most High because He'll give me discernment in those conversations. That sometimes it's like you ain't gonna listen to me, and I've said as much to people. But this happened in Jeremiah. I want to say it was 41. If it wasn't 41, it might have been 40. But either way, the kingdom that we knew of had fallen already, and everybody was like the people that were left behind that weren't drugged into captivity was like, "Yo, Jeremiah, can you tell us basically what's going to happen? Like, you know what I mean? Can you go to the Most High and ask him what we should do?" And Jeremiah was like, "Cool." He took 10 days. He prayed. He saw God, and he came back to the people, and he had a very interesting conversation with them. He was like, "One, you're not going to listen to what I have to say. You're already going to do what you want to do, but God is telling you to build here." To build here where we are still in Judah. Don't go to Egypt, because if you go to Egypt, the very thing that you're afraid of, the very things that you're running from are going to come to you. Some of you are going to die. Some of you are going to be enslaved if you go there. But if you stay here and you build, and you could tell God was saying, "Trust in me, even now after I've judged, and I got you." But if you run to try to get peace from Egypt, which ironically meant the house of bondage. If you try to get peace in the house of bondage, you got trouble coming. What is the relevance to that? The relevance to that right now in this time is we have to, as people of God, trust God. We, as people of God, have to put our faith in God. We can't put our faith in politicians. We can't put our faith in money and institutions that we've seen and all those things. We have to take some time and pray and connect to what He is telling us to do. Because the truth is, everything that we've put our confidence in, we've watched Him, whether it's Him or time or whatever, but I believe it was Him, lay it all asunder. Everything you were confident in, everything you had faith and confidence in as a younger person is, especially my generation, is laid asunder. We had, think about it, heart of the pandemic. We had faith in the government, some of us. That's questionable now. We have faith in institutions like the physical church. So many scandals, and a lot of them got locked down during COVID. We have faith in institutions like marriage. That's really questionable now, hard to find. Romance is the same conversation. Dating right now, for all people, but specifically in my community, is so complicated now. It's not even funny. We have faith in money. We going through inflation. Like, that's suspect. You feel what I'm saying? We have faith in um culture. Our culture is in such disarray. It's not even funny. It's really concerning to see how that's even played out, where things are backwards. You know what I'm saying? I'm probably end up making my own video talking about this here, but like, we have, our culture is in trouble. Like, we want, we promote, we push destruction, and then it's like weird. Like, we have such a low bar of expectation, but celebration of those that promote destruction to us. But the ones that try to provide life and whatever, we call them corny, and then we criticize them and try to bash them at the drop of a dime. Do you feel like that's a righteous thought? Where am I going with this? Well, somebody like Will Smith have been positive for years. It was so much stuff that, like, people were trying to dig up and expose and dig up and expose, and then finally it was just like, all right, cool, we out here. This is how our family's been for the last forever. And that was another thing too. There's a problem with black folk. We specifically, as far as like what we put our faith in, like, yo, these celebrity marriages, so many of them were suspect. Like, Alicia Keys had a whole song about it. We could be like, and it was crazy because it was all television shows, and that's really all that's left, right? It's fictitious things that in scripts of people that people made up to present to us as entertainment, but we're looking at them as goals. Um, and they're not real. None of them exist. You know what I'm saying? They might get into an argument in this episode, and the next episode the writer decided they were just fine. But you getting in the same argument with your lady, y'all talking about this 3 months later. We have to put our faith and our connection back in God. If we start with God, everything else well, most of the other things that we care about will be okay. If we start with God, our family will be okay. If we start with God and we actually follow the principles that are actually laid out by God, like Proverbs, when they talk about bread and money and different stuff, right? That will be okay. Like, if we focus on God, things like marriages, he shows us how to manage marriages in the scriptures. If we focus on God raising children, he shows us how to raise children in the scriptures. The problem has come in and has been consistently that we pick and choose stuff that we're going to follow that we won't. We pick and choose parts of the book that we're going to deal with and that we won't, instead of trying to understand the holistic holistic wisdom, direction, and instruction that he gives us. We try to do it a version of like this hybridized, bastardized version where it's like what he wants and then what we want, and then what he wants and then what we want. But that is not acceptable. And I'm saying this to myself as well, is that the mixed results and the bad results I've gotten in different places in my life has completely come from me trying to blend my way with his way instead of doing it his way. Or even this live stream, I didn't know if I was going to talk about any of this stuff. I didn't. I had it in my mind, like I'm thinking about the Eagles and different stuff like that, but I felt called to do this. I felt called to stream online on YouTube. I don't even know where this is going, but I do know that we are now in a position and a time in a season where us as believers, people that believe in God, people that was raised in God, but you getting a tug on your spirit or what have you, we have to now give him all of it. Because right now, whether we recognize it or not, we are in the eye of a storm politically. We're involved in 2 wars right now as a country. We're involved in an inflation that was really, it felt like it was avoidable, to be honest. Even the health stuff, they keep talking about this disease might come over that. Things are so chaotic. We are literally in the middle of a storm, and we just get little reprieves here and there. And usually in those reprieves, that you're in the eye of the storm. And during the eye of the storm, what do you want to do if you want to see the sun? You look up. You see light when you look up, because there's peace in the eye of the storm if you just look up. So right now, I want to encourage y'all to pray, to be discerning, check your biases at the door, and pay attention to this. Pay attention to the Most High. Spend some time praying, and not like, oh well, you get some type of spirituality in your life. No, Pray to the God of the Bible, especially if you was raised that way. Put them crystals down. Stop burning that sage. It disaffects rooms. It doesn't get rid of spirits. It smells good. Like, it doesn't do anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the clinical thing that it does. It will not ward off spirits. There is not a scripture in the Bible that supports any of that type of behavior. If anything, you're kind of in agreement with something that is outside of God, so that could be dangerous. But that's a subject for another video. Welcome to Life with Mayo. Yeah, and I hope that this was edifying to whoever finds it. I didn't even expect it to be like this. Yeah, I didn't expect it to be like this, but once again, thank you for tuning in. There's more to come. We kept it around 15 minutes today. Have a blessed one.